Hey guys, it is Esti and Justin from Not For Long Media.
If you like the video you're about to watch, be sure to like the video itself and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it.
Enjoy the video, and also don't forget to follow us on our socials at Not For Long Media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
All right, guys. We have a friend of mine joining the podcast today that I got to work with down at Chip Smith back in the day, coming out back for my pro day. It was an awesome experience getting to know Jaclyn Sklaver and everything she's about down there. She's a Temple Owl. She's a founder of Athleats and does just a bunch of different things. Works with athletes across the country, all different sports, from boxing to the NFL to the NBA. Jaclyn Sklaver, thanks for joining us at Not For Long Media.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited. A fellow Temple Owl. Now, are you born and raised in Philly? Was New York involved? I forget.
Yeah. So is that my or you? Is that me or you? I think I went on private for mine. Is that you? Yeah. I am. Yeah, I think it was you. All
right, my bad.
I'm from South Jersey. So I went to high school in South Jersey and went to Temple for undergrad and then moved up to New York. So I spent about 17 years in New York before I came. Now I'm in Miami. COVID helped me go south.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about COVID today. We need your expert opinion. But before we get into the expert opinion stuff, because I want to talk about creatine. You talk about that all the time on your great follow on Instagram. You cover so many different topics. So shout out to you. It's awesome. You're an awesome follow. So I got to send our people there for sure. But I want to talk about what you've been up to lately. This is a busy time for you. I'm kicking it into a low gear, trying to regroup, trying to, lean out, trying to do all the things I'm doing to get ready to go to get going again come March, really. But what are you up to now? What's going on? Obviously a fun time of year in football.
So this is always a busy time of year for me because I do NFL draft prep. And this year I'm involved with two facilities, House of Athlete in Tampa, which is run by Yo Murphy, and Game Face Training, which is up in Boca. So I have both of them. I have my year-round NFL and NBA players that I'm working with. And then, as you know, some guys are starting NFL off season. So I started to get that call because, the athletes that are on it. And the guys that aren't, I'll probably get the call about 3 weeks before OTAs, like, Jack, I need to lose some weight. But the ones who really benefit from nutrition are like, they're on it from the second they know they need that guidance as soon as you leave the team, right? So I've got these calls coming in, and then I'm actually starting a little bit with Major League Baseball. As you know, there's a lockout going on right now, which is kind of giving them a little more time to think about other areas, like what's going on with my nutrition. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, there's so much to tackle with it. I've been a guy that has been good with my weight. I was always fortunate enough to dad being like, okay, you need this, you need that. We kind of get you moving. Heavy peanut butter. Probably should have did it a little bit differently. I gained a lot of weight in a little bit amount of time, but always been a bigger boy, always been like a pasta guy and an eater. So it's never been like some of my buddies, as you know, in this business, don't eat at all.
Right.
And just lose weight like crazy, but they're unbelievable athletes and can make up for it. Best advice for people trying to gain weight, especially young athletes.
So weight gain, especially for young athletes, is about whatever you think you should be eating, you probably need to be eating a lot more. And I forgot to say this, I have been working with a lot of high school athletes over the past 7 months. I did a quarterback camp and kind of spread, I don't know if it's called viral when people are actually just telling each other about you, but word of mouth. I've had some really great results with high school athletes because what's happening is people are just under eating. It's almost more than you can mentally comprehend that you need to eat. But you need to also keep it quote unquote clean in the sense of, you have to avoid fried foods, inflammatory foods. The main objective I tell people is when you're an athlete, the rules are different than what you're reading in the magazine for, just gym goers. Yeah, you can have milkshakes if you need them. You can have high calorie foods because that's what's going to put the weight on. But I always like to stay anti-inflammatory. And so that means, no, I don't want you going to Chick-fil-A to get your calories in. I don't want you having wings and pizza on the weekends. There's lots of ways to do it with things that are, and I like to say kind of your plant-based fats. So there's going to be your avocados, olive oils, coconuts. So you get to have a lot of really good foods, but it's really eating a lot. And it's the timing, because I see guys going either into workouts without eating or, I'm out in the field for 3 hours with no fuel. And you can't do that. You're going in a negative at that point.
And some guys can for a sustained amount, right? They can do it for a couple of days, but you just dip off. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, and the other thing is people will get done practice, they don't go straight home. And it's I'm going to eat in an hour or so, or you run to your boy's house or you go to CVS or who knows. Right. And that's a big time too. It's as soon as we're done our workout, our body needs that fuel right away. But you're right. Some people can get away with it for years. You know, like, are they performing at their best? And I also stress to people that nutrition is not weight loss, weight gain. If you're an athlete, it's performance. We are optimizing your performance and your recovery, because your recovery is going to allow you to train more, to play more, and to play longer. And that's the name of the game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I've been fortunate enough to work with people like yourself. And again, like, it's been a thing in my house since a young boy about eating and like when to eat and these different things for performance. And my dad wasn't a high level athlete, but kind of understood that you got to eat and put things in, and we got to have pasta the night before games and pancakes in the morning before breakfast, like before games. And I was very lucky to have that. So when I got to the league, when I got to, college, and we had nutritionists, and then when I got to you, we could take another level of conversation, which was awesome for me, where a lot of guys, I feel like, are like, well, what do you mean I have to get up an hour and a half earlier so I can digest and perform, which has been great for me. And I feel like it's been huge as someone who's not like one of the freak athletes who has to like kind of do everything right to some extent, other than beers, but don't tell anybody. It's been great. And again, I'm probably I'm talking back and forth to you because you're like consulting me as well in the past.
Because you're lucky you did come from a background where nutrition was stressed, but I would say that's probably 20% of the athletes that I work with where nutrition comes from their background at home. That's why I'm always happy when I have parents calling me, because I'm like, okay, great, they're involved. I would say, like, when a parents call, 70% the times the athletes are involved too, and 30% I'm like, it's the resistance. I'm on the phone with these, or a Zoom with these guys, like, help me help you, just tell me what you want. But not everybody's coming into like combine prep or coming into the league with that. Most people aren't coming in with that solid background. So you definitely had a good advantage, and it's understanding the value of it. And there's so many habit changes too, right? It's like emotional and lifestyle changes. Food is such a big influence in people's lives. So it's easy to go into the gym and you have a coach over you for an hour, 2 hours, telling you what to do and pushing you. But I'm going to tell you what to do, and I'm going to hold you accountable, but I'm not there all day pushing you. And I'm not there all day to give you that willpower in that direction. That's where it becomes more challenging.
There's so much to tackle here. It's such a fun topic. And obviously you thrive in it, and I love it. And it's so all our listeners will enjoy this today. It's a different one we're doing, but there's so much around the game. Everyone wants to know why all these games have evolved and got better. Yes, players are practicing more. We're year-round athletes. But I think it's the coaching's better in all phases: mental strength and conditioning, and then take nutrition into it. How big is the impact nutrition's been on all sports? I mean, I had Sarah Snyder was our nutritionist at Florida. Sarah's the head nutritionist for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, we had unbelievable nutritionists. We had people at Temple. We had all these coaches, again, on other things in football. I know it's kind of a broad question, but what is like the emphasis on eating and fueling meant to the sports world?
It's a great question. I think that some teams really emphasize it and some don't. And I see that as I don't work with the team. I'm hired outside by the athletes. So I do get to speak with different team dietitians or strength and conditioning coaches, and every team's different. Every team, it depends on the owners and where they want to put the emphasis and the money. And some teams have great dietitians. Some teams might, in the NBA, they might not even have a dietitian. It's left up to the strength coach. Some teams have amazing chefs, and you might be able to speak to this. I mean, some teams, the food is amazing, and some they're like, I'm not eating that food over there, which is a whole nother problem that comes up. Even on the flights, some teams are provided great food and some aren't. So there's a huge variable. And so the teams that get it, and the ones that don't, I honestly I was just having this conversation this morning. I mean, like, you look at the Rams, they have a great nutrition program and their dietitians on the field. And that's huge. When the coaches recognize that, hey, we need the dietitian mic'd up on the field. Guess what? The Rams are doing amazing. And yeah, sure, there's so many variables, but that nutrition is a variable that's in there. And I love to see that, because more and more people need to put emphasis on it. And the ones that don't, I see that too. I really do, because I know how involved the coaches are from my perspective. It's like, well, of course that team's not doing good. They don't even get back to me. They don't even care what's going on with their athlete as I reach out. So
yeah, it's a holistic approach. Really, how you do anything is how you do everything. It all matters. And especially in pro sports, definitely in youth levels, you just don't have the resources to do it too. But no, we have a great program with Kate Calloway and us in Carolina. I'm very lucky. And love our food. It's been great. Now let's track back to what you're doing on an individual process with these draft preps. Now we did certain things with Chip Smith and you were with Diamatize and all these different things going on, but what are you doing now? Who are you working with? You don't have to give names. I don't know if that's legal or not, but just talk about like your process, your preparation, working with these athletes. And then when you get them, what are those conversations like?
So at Chips, I was Diamatize was actually, I started there as an intern, and Diamatize was kind of sponsoring the internship. So that's how I ended up there. And then I decided to stay, like move my life down there and do it on my own. And with Chips was great. He changed my life, welcomed me into that family. But with you guys, I really got to be there every single day. Every day I was in that facility and got to establish that relationship. Now I kind of work from afar, and that's partly because of COVID, because, in 2020, I was in the facility down in Florida. I was with XPE. But then COVID hit and it just halted. And so the environment's a little bit different now. I go up to House of Athlete in Tampa, like once a week or once every other week, and game face. And it's really at this point, it's kind of a group program. We have people that need to gain weight, and we have people that need to lose weight. But as you know, when people are put into this combine prep program, I mean, the muscle that people gain and the weight that people gain it's beyond anything you ever see in research. People are like, nah, did he gain 8 pounds of muscle in 2 weeks? I'm like, sure did. Sure did.
Because it's your life. You move in. It's so much different than college. You don't have the distractions. You don't have the things going on, and you're with everyone who's like-minded. Everyone has their buddies in college who, and I was one of those guys at times that just like has a good time and lets it go. And you can afford that because you got 2 months till spring ball or whatever it is. But when you have your 8 weeks and you're invested and your agent's invested, or a guy like me who was paying for training, there's no like, I'm just going to go. Yeah. You're going to be dialed in.
And I tell people that I'm like, the people that are dialed in on the weekends are the ones that are going to see results. We have 8 weeks. We don't have time to figure things out in the weekends. So so what I do remotely is I'll track their weights, whoever is I have an intern on the ground there, and we communicate, and I'll look at the weights weekly. And if there's outliers, I have to reach out to them. Because we don't have time. And I know, because this is my 6th season doing this. I've done like 380 draft prep athletes. So if everybody's kind of trending and there's some outliers, then it's habits. And listen, people are human. I don't expect you all of a sudden to be put in this environment and be like, well, I'm not going to give into my emotional eating, or I'm not going to feel, and who knows what people have going on. You're in a new environment, you're taken away from your family, who knows what's going on. So I can't blame them, but I do want to talk to them and get to that, and understand. So I'll have one-on-ones with those athletes, because the sooner we can get to what the issue is, the sooner I can help counsel them and talk them and walk them through it. So those people get a little bit more attention.
No, sorry. It's there's so much to tackle again, because, all right, let's go back to Chip Smith. Like, what an amazing person, and his environment down there that he does. What was it like working with them? And in that, like, you had the chef, we had the Diamatize, like protein everywhere. I remember going in the kitchen, but you were on the floor. I mean, that's like being in an NFL building. Like that's like our nutritionist in Carolina, right? You're like in the kitchen doing whatever, you're helping us with our meal prep stuff. And then you're out in the weight room, and cause you're like a strength coach as well. So you were all over the place.
Yeah, no, it was awesome to be able to experience that, and for him to allow that, and make me, my introduction to pro sports was like, I'm just like everyone else. And at no point did I ever feel like I wasn't inadequate. I wasn't as, because I'm a woman, whatever. He was like, here, hold the ropes, here, get in this. Oh, we need one more person to get into this relay race, get in the race, and I'm like, okay. But it really also taught me how to watch athletes and their performance and see. And so now I always tell, like, even when I was working with, with training Deontay for his fight, for me to see my athletes perform is so important, because I learned how to watch cues and see when there's exhaustion, or see when things start to change, when they're mentally getting exhausted physically. But that's the best experience. So I think that's where my roots come from. I'm always pressing, like, I need to be in the facility. I need to see my athletes train. If it's one-on-one, I need to see him in the ring. I need to see what happens, so that I can, because the science is the science, but everyone's an individual. So that's very important to me.
Yeah, that's a great point. The science is a science, but everyone's an individual. It is an individualistic approach, weigh-ins, your eating, the conversation behind it, like face-to-face, the emotion behind it. It was a special place. It was a good time. Something I always smile back at. It
was like a camp, right? It's always like a big summer camp of everybody kind of going to the same goal at once. So
yeah, it was a good group too. We had a lot of fun. Deontay Wilder. Yeah. Talk about this experience. I saw on social media, and I was like, when I get Jackie on, we got to bring that up. So talk about how that started, and how did it finish?
Sure. I don't know if you remember Dr. Elamine. He was, I think, the consultant sports medicine doctor at Chips, and that's how I met him. he's an orthopedic surgeon based down in Atlanta. And he was Deontay's doctor who was brought on to run his medical team. And when he was picking up the third fight with Fury, he needed to gain weight. So Doc called me up and he's like, I need your help, girl. You ready for this? And I'm like, of course, of course I'm ready for it. So I was brought on to help him gain weight. And I think what they started to realize along the way was, wow, this isn't just about weight gain. This is about performance. And this is about recovery. And his coaches are amazing. They definitely saw that. So we put on, like 20 some pounds I think we did it in about 10 weeks. And then the fight was canceled and because of COVID. And then we had to do it all over again. And that meant, for him, a lot of eating. And when you have to eat that much food and you're training so many hours a day, it's a lot of timing and how, when are you going to eat food and how are you going to eat it? And it became I think a second job for him without a doubt. It was a love-hate relationship. Like when he saw me, he was like, oh man, I got to eat more food.
What was his calorie intake like? Because boxers are constantly training. Like there's a million different things to train in boxing, not just cardio, hand quick. I don't even know it, but I'm assuming.
Yeah. And then you get somebody like, I don't even want to say just like him, like almost every athlete that I work with one-on-one, at any given moment, I can like call them and be like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm building a fort down by the river. We're building a house today. And I'm like, you're doing what? Like that wasn't in the plan. And it's funny, I was talking to one of my athletes last night because the season was over for him and he was packing up his house to move. And he's like, I have so much energy. I think my body was so used to doing so much output every day that I can't sit still right now. And so that's common. You have this high level athlete and on their rest days, they want to keep going. You try and sit someone down, it's hard. So what I did with him, which was really unique, is every Sunday I flew out to Alabama. I'd fly into Atlanta and drive to Alabama. And that's because we really needed a team environment. And when you're an individual athlete, it's very different. Your team is the people you put around you. You don't have teammates every day. You have your coaches and you have the people that you trust and that you built out. So I'd go out there with Elamine and we'd have the coaches there, strength and conditioning, boxing coach, and his chef, who's his aunt. And, we'd spend a few hours together every Sunday and it's how are things going, doing recovery, planning out the next week, kind of really just to build that family team environment, which is really, really important when you're an individual sport athlete.
Unbelievable. I mean, this is someone who's at the top of one of the top sports in the world. And it's so what does that mean to you to be able to work with someone like that? And then, talk about the experience of when the fight actually went down.
I mean, it's such an honor to be a part of a team like that, especially, Deontay, his heart is so into it and his team is his family. It really is an honor to be able to be picked as a part of that team. Fight week was something I can never, ever explain. They said to me, you're going to need some time to yourself afterwards. I could never put it into words, just the week leading up to it, because I did coordinate. I hired a chef in Vegas and I coordinated the food for him and for the team. And we also ate dinner together. I decided it would be best if we ate dinner together every night. So we did. We ate dinner in his room every night together as a team. And so there was a lot of moving parts to all of that and the coordination of it all. And then, having him weigh in at 228, which was a record weight for him, that was amazing as well. And then the fight night is nothing you can ever explain, ever. To be able to walk out, I walked out with the team, and when you get into that arena, it was next level. I mean, literally nothing you could ever put into words. It was such a great experience.
228. That's your Super Bowl. So he was 208 at one point in time?
It was 205 and then 212. And then we kind of gradually went up and up and up. And then right before the first fight, I think I have it all in a spreadsheet. I think we were about 220. We were about 225, something like that. And then the fight was canceled. It was postponed. So we went down a little bit because we all, we had to take some time off. And then we picked things back up right after the Summer Olympics because Joey, his coach, was out in the Summer Olympics with his track guys. And we started over again. We built back up. And I had in my head, this number. I was like, 238. I'm sorry. It wasn't 228, right? Now I'm mistaking it. I think it's 238, right? Okay. I had this number because I'm 228 doesn't make sense. 238. And so I just had this number in my head that I would like us to get to. And when it happened, I was like, oh, it was amazing.
That's Super Bowl. And that's in front of a stage too. He's not weighing in a back room. He's not weighing in a dusty old, we're not in Chip Smith. Love Chip Smith's facility. But we're not in Chip Smith. There's no one watching. We're talking about everyone sees that weight.
Yeah. Yep. It was it was just, I actually cried, I think, when he got on there. But yeah. And, I think we started the week, I feel like pulling up my spreadsheet to see where we were at, but I think we were 230, something like that. And I was like, all right, we're going to get there. And part of that was just eating together. There's a lot that goes on around fight week and a lot of media and a lot of nerves and a lot of interviews. And I even met him. What I would do is if we had a media thing scheduled at 12 o'clock and that was his time to eat, I would bring the food to the green room and make sure he ate. And I was on it.
Yeah. And he was like, oh man, I thought I was going to get away with this one. Probably didn't have to eat until after, but not this week. Definitely not this week.
Saying. It was probably a love hate. Like every time he saw my face, he was probably like, oh no, not again.
Yeah. That is definitely the Super Bowl for you. It seems. I don't want to speak for you, but that's it. You're a big football fan. Yeah. You're always talking about it. I see, again, great follow on social media. If you're a football fan, nutrition fan, dieting fan, whatever that may be, Jackie's a great follow. Talk about your love for football though, because, again, you work with athletes, but you really do love the game.
I do. I love watching football more than any sport. The elements kind of kill me. Now working in NBA, it's much more plush to just go into the and, much more comfortable and the game's over. It's not like this, especially, I lived in New York for years. So going to MetLife it's an experience, but I wouldn't trade it. MetLife is the best. That life is awesome. But I love watching football so much. I try not to miss anything. I have 4 screens going at once. And I always have. It's weird. I think back to like, when did it start? And I was like at the high school football games and I'm the kind of like, I go to sports by myself. I used to watch sports on Sunday in New York by myself because I never had friends who wanted to. So I really, for some reason, football is a sport I enjoy the most. And it's a lot different also when you have athletes on the field. I feel like a mother who has, at any given moment, a certain amount of sons out in the field, which can be good because sometimes I'm full of anxiety. And then sometimes it's just like a really proud moments as well. So it's really interesting.
It's good to have a little bit of stake in the game. Like, hey, I work with that person, or I'm, even if you talk to that person all the time or not, not fear, but something I'm sure when I'm done playing, I'll be like, maybe 10 years after, I'll be like, man, I don't know anybody in the league anymore. And that will be tough. I hear people talk about that all the time on different podcasts or hockey or whatever it is. Like, man, I don't know anybody in the league anymore. So maybe I'll have to just stay in the league and do something because it's so much different. As someone who like grew up in Philadelphia, as you know, everyone's huge Eagles fans. And I just wasn't as a kid because we had all these family ties to different teams. We followed the team because a family member was a coach. And it was so unique. You like lived and died with those players, that anxiety that you talk about. Yeah,
it's different when you have people on the field and people say to me, well, who's your favorite team? And honestly, I don't have that. I go where my athletes are. And that's my favorite team of the time. I do like to go to Miami games. And it's interesting because most of the games I go to, I do have, a couple guys that play in Miami, but a lot of times I have an opponent. And that's what made me go to that game, which is such a weird feeling because you're cheering against the opposite team. It's a very weird experience to go to a game when you want the other team to win. But yeah, I don't really have like a specific favorite team because I follow my athletes. And if I don't, have any connection to any of the athletes that are on the field, it is a little bit different of an experience. I can still appreciate the game, but it's just different skin in the game.
Yeah, no doubt. It's an awesome game. It's treated both of us well. And it's so much fun to, kind of encompass everything and get everyone back involved. That's why this podcast has been fun for me. All the people that have helped me along the way and friends along the way, like yourself, that I've been able to connect with. It's been great. So let's transition though to early on, like pre-nutrition, pre-athletes. You're a restaurant manager at Joe's Stone Crab in Chicago. I saw that on LinkedIn, good old LinkedIn. And then you're in marketing and you're in business development and, you're just doing all that for about a decade plus early on in your career. Talk about, that early stage and then the transition into nutrition.
So I really, I was in the restaurant business for years, like 12 years. I also, managed restaurants in Philadelphia. So it all came full circle now because having that 5-star restaurant experience, when it's whether it be food ordering or customer service or all of that, has really played itself out in how I have to work with these athletes at an elite level, or even in Vegas, having to serve everybody and know what I needed on the back end from the hotel to help me in food ordering and my relationships with chefs. But I've always been into nutrition my whole life. And I was just intimidated by it in college. The biochemistry is no joke. And at a big school, it's easy to get lost. And I just wasn't mentally, there yet. And so I kind of want to say I took the easy route. I did public relations and that got me through Temple, but I never really had that passion for it. And I found myself going to companies that, and you'll see, I worked for this company called Sports Center that were all sports oriented or fitness oriented. And that's kind of where I would have myself go. But on the back end, I just still wanted to do nutrition. So I decided to go back to school for nutrition, which meant quitting my corporate job and becoming a personal trainer in New York City. It was a big leap, without having a salary in New York City. It was a hustle. It's definitely a hustle, but I wouldn't do any different at all. I should mention, I also work with, gym goers, not just professional athletes. And that gave me a really good base in New York City because all of the top trainers in New York City we're like, well, if I have an athlete, if I have a client that needs to lose weight or whatever it may be, we can trust Jackie. We can send them to Jackie. So that helped me, that network in New York City helped me really get my business going. So when I came down to CHIPS, I already had my business started. It just wasn't with pro athletes. It was more of like your local CrossFit gyms or Equinox goers, things like that.
How did Athleats start? And folks, that's Athleats with eats at the end, EATS.
Yes. I used to be called Fit Miss NYC. And that was like,
nice.
And when I went down to Atlanta, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to change my name because men aren't, first of all, I'm not just New York City. And second of all, I'm working with men. So what am I going to do? And I was sitting in grad school on a Sunday and I found my doodles and I just kept like doodling. And I'm like, athletes, that's what it's going to be, and then of course you have to do all the back stuff. Like, does anyone own it? Can I get the URL? You have to plot all these things out nowadays when you want to start a business. And that's kind of where I decided to change the name over. So like I said, I kind of had the business going, but I decided to focus more on having a broader market and doing that. And I think that also helped, having that, my journalism, public relations, that kind of background helped me be able to be an entrepreneur, because that's an important part too, right? Like anybody could start a business, but they forget to tell you that you went to grad school for nutrition and biochemistry, but oh yeah, by the way, you have to be a business owner now. You have to do the marketing, you have to do the social media, you have to figure out how you're going to get clients.
No, it's unbelievable. Like 5-tool business owners, we call them, like who you meet along the way that are, okay, they own their own business. Yeah. Or you own your own, you own yourself in a way as an athlete. Like in my world, in our locker room, like there's guys that are just pure football players and that's all they do. And it's awesome because they're really good at it, or they made a living, or maybe they haven't, they're just getting started. Or you have guys that are like 5-tool players that I call them, like they just can do anything. Or when they weren't doing football, they'd be really successful. And there's a lot of people like that. I found myself answering for a lot of players. I'm sure you do too, like how good guys are, how great, knowledgeable people are. I guess it's just this thing with athletes in general, but neither here nor there. Yeah. I mean, it's 100% true. And you talked about, okay, you're in PR and at Temple, and you're in the city, which is another, I think, advantage from someone who went to a bubble school at Florida first, where you're just at Florida, and then you go to Temple and you're like, okay, I got to figure my way around the city if I want to go out for a bite to eat, or I got to figure my way to the downtown campus, or I got to walk through a street that, there may be, some people on the street that aren't members of the student body per se.
Definitely a Temple there is, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely a Temple.
So when you went than when I went, it was pretty shady because I was there in the early 2000s, and now it's a whole different place than when I went there, but that's for sure.
It is. And, it's funny, like this is a great testament what you've done to younger business people, men, women, whatever you may be, athletes, non-athletes, because, okay, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this PR degree. I'm going to take whatever I can from that. Then I'm going to get into, the next thing that I think I'm going to do. And that's in the restaurant business for whatever it was, a decade. And then you're marketing, developing. And then all of a sudden you're like, I think I have a passion for X. And I find myself, and you could talk about this too, because I know you're a mentor for people. They're just constantly like, well, how do you do this? What do you do? How do you have a podcast? How do you do both, playing podcasts and marketing and all these other things? I'm like, I don't know. I just keep it moving and keep it rolling. Did you find yourself doing the same thing all the way through?
Yeah. Dude, what's that quote they say? Like, if you want to get something done, ask the busiest person you know.
Yeah.
Isn't that a quote like that? That's just, some days, like yesterday, I'm like, gosh, how did I do all this stuff in one day? You can't really stop. You have to learn a work-life balance, but when things are busy for me, you can't really stop. I did just bring on, delegation and hiring is something that I would say is probably one of my weaker things because I've tried it and I wasn't successful. And when I had a little bit of downtime this past fall, my low season is usually like November, December. I decided to look into hiring and bring people on board to help me. And being able to know how to delegate and get people to help you with that time is really, really important. But you got to keep going. You have to do multiple things. So people that are doing multiple things are always the most successful for sure. Like you said, it's almost like if you had a day where you had nothing that you had to do, you'd probably get a lot less of your list done than a day that you're busy, right? Like I'm
hitting that right now. Absolutely. So I can get so much stuff done after football practice or whatever, after our day in the facility. If I it's like my escape. I'm the type of player, a lot of guys bring work home and that's fine. I do not. I'll stay till 6, 7 o'clock, do a 12 or 13-hour day just to get all the work done. So when I get home, I can mentally I'm home, and I'll get a ton of stuff done in 2 hours. But now that we're done and I'm at home and there's a bunch of stuff we have to do here to get organized, and we're going to be moving around a lot this spring. It's like, man, I feel like I can't even touch this to-do list. I'm getting one thing done a day.
And that's
So
something really important. I think that it's important, like for athletes or for non-athletes, is, taking that mental space and figuring out what works best for you and your approach and your mentality, and also sticking to an agenda and a schedule. And a lot of athletes are so used to having that schedule handed to them of, this is what we're doing at meetings at this time and on the field at that time and lunch at this time. And then the season ends and there's nothing. And that's where, and I work with the NFLPA with like their IR athletes, and I sometimes give them feedback and say, hey, this is a program you need. You need to have something for the athletes where when the season ends, they can work with a dietitian or nutritionist, because they need it then. They need the structure. And it hasn't happened yet, but that's something that I really feel should be put out there, because if you don't have structure, what's going to happen? At least you can have a structure on your eating schedule. And, so I think it's just something that's like super important. Athletes are very used to that rigorous schedule, but everyone works differently.
yeah, no doubt. It's something that's taken me time to figure out, for sure. A lot of trials and tribulations, but again, the curiosity behind nutrition, the curiosity behind like how my mind works, and then how to run a little bit of a business, while you're playing. And I think too, like older players now, I think you have a better opportunity to play in the league now than ever. Nutrition is better than it's ever been, right? That's the most important thing. How you can keep your body afloat, how you train, that's more science behind it now than ever. But also the side of it's like, hey, listen, some of these rookies or some of these young guys, they don't really know. They don't maybe deep dive in as much as maybe we were because of whatever it is, just young and being distracted about, what makes you tick and what makes you go. So I don't know, it's food for thought. We'll keep an eye on it, but I think there's more to help older players now than ever.
I think another thing I've seen is when younger players get a good mentor, in the league or wherever they're playing, and that mentor puts stress on certain things like nutrition. You find that because it's very rare that I work with guys until they're, 7, 8, 9, 10 years in the league, or they were injured. I have 2 guys this year that are kind of new, like the second year, but that's because a mentor told them, you need to focus on your nutrition now, not when you feel like it's an emergency. So I think it's really important, like mentorships and just guys that are coming into the league, to find someone that they think has been successful and they like the way they've done things, and have them, speak to them and share what they've done and help them out with that.
I'm not going to speak about a certain player. He's listening. He knows exactly who I'm addressing. He definitely doesn't even listen to the podcast, but if he did, he knows he's going to be working with Jackie, or I'm going to be suggesting at least.
Okay.
As we trend towards wrapping things up, I want to hit a couple of nutritional questions. I want to pick your brain on these things. Let's discuss creatine. I know there's a million things on it. When I was in high school, creatine, you might as well thought it was in steroids, and I was getting kicked out of school and the world's coming to an end. Now I'm reading that it's encouraged for males and females to take it, whether you're an athlete or not, whether you're crazy hard at training or not. Talk about the mental health behind it, the studies behind it. Again, you talk about it frequently, probably weekly, it seems, on your Instagram.
Creatine is one of my favorite supplements. It's the most studied sports supplement on the market. And it is the most hated. It's like that person you love to hate, right? I mean, if creatine was an athlete, it'd almost be like Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Like, it's so great that people hate it. And because we have so much research, we can say definitively, yes, we know this and we don't know this. But unfortunately, there's been a lot of rumors. And I think it's because some of the research may have been over the past 5 years or so. No, it does not dehydrate you. Well, let's talk about what creatine is, right? Your body produces creatine and it's part of our energy system. But when we supplement with it, what we see is increase in muscle gain. We see increase in power output. And we also see a neuroprotective effect of it. So it helps with concussions and also helps with memory and quickness. So they're using it in Alzheimer's. And we see people who are plant-based, like vegans and vegetarians, because it comes from meat. We see that when they take creatine, they have increased memory. So it is not just for power output, and it's also for your brain. So it's something that everybody can benefit from, even if you're not active. The one downside that I'll admit is it's a monohydrate. The hydrate connects to a water molecule. So yes, you can add a little bit of water weight, and that varies on your own body weight. Women could be 1 pound, men could be like maybe 2, maybe 3, but the good outweighs the bad. And as soon as you go off of it, the water weight comes off. It's water, so the benefit from it is definitely better. No, it does not dehydrate you. It does not cause muscle cramps. It does not affect your kidneys negatively. It is not a steroid, and it's not going to make you huge. I hear people say, oh, I don't want to get huge. Listen, if it worked that well, and we'd all be, I'd be double dosing creatine. I wish it worked that well. It's a great thing. It does what it needs to do, but it's not going to make you huge. It's not going to make you fat. And it's such a great supplement. I really love it. And it doesn't taste like anything, and it's relatively affordable. So you just throw it in your face.
Yeah. It is. Okay. What else? Let's see. Like talk about what else you have like your athletes on, like talk about branch chains, like what's that amino acid world like?
So branched chain amino acids, one of the things we found out about them with research is if you are eating protein throughout the day, you really don't need branched chain amino acids. Therefore, to keep us in like that net positive of amino acid balance to prevent muscle loss. But we find that if you're eating, a decent amount of protein about every 4 hours, there was no benefit to taking BCAAs. And we used to not know that. So in most cases, I tell people they're kind of one of those supplements where you can put your money aside and not spend it on that. If you are going long periods of time, and sometimes it applies to athletes that might be out there for like 4 hours or something, and it is easy to throw into your water. It can't hurt, but it's not, you don't have to have it.
So we've been diving into, my wife and I, she's a physical therapist, but we're very active in trying to, get healthier, get our families healthier, all the above. Just the abundance of protein, trying to get, a gram per pound really a day plus. And it's amazing, like how you feel, how much better I feel, how much better I do training, my weight maintenance, how I feel. What are your thoughts on just like supplementing like protein shakes and like abundance of protein per day to maintain a lean, balanced diet? And again, I don't want to, you're charging for this stuff, so don't give all your secrets, but I appreciate it
on a lot of levels. A pound per gram of body weight is kind of on the higher end. If you're in a deficit, we say to do that, but with some people, it really depends because we have to play this balance of like how much carbs and fat. So it could be anywhere, I say like 0.8 to a pound of body weight. One of the great things about protein is that it's thermogenic, meaning it takes more of our body's energy to actually break it down. So it can aid in the weight loss a little bit. And it's very satiating, it's filling. One of the negative sides of that, if you're somebody who's larger and you need to eat 250 to 275 grams a day, that could be really filling. And that's where protein shakes come in handy. And they're easy. So I do recommend protein shakes, get yourself a good quality protein. And sometimes, you might need one twice a day. It depends on your size. I don't like when I see somebody who their entire day is protein bar, protein shake, protein bar, protein shake. We do want you to have actual food because there's micronutrients that come along with it. So to me, I always tell people, try to limit yourself to like 2 protein products a day. But it really depends on the situation. And I think without protein powder, it'd be very hard for athletes to keep weight on. It's also a way that you can make 1,000-calorie shake. You can get 1,000 calories in one shake versus a plate of food this big.
I was having a field day back in my weight gain days. People say they can't gain weight. I was like, this is the most fun I've ever had. But again, I'm an eater.
Yeah.
My family says.
Gaining weight can be just as hard as losing weight. Eating around the clock can be just as stressful as losing weight for some people. So you were lucky.
Yeah, I loved it. Load up the peanut butter and the 2 scoops of protein and the bananas and the berries and the shake, and then have a huge dinner. Like, sign me up. All right, let's transition to COVID. You cannot address it. Obviously, there's like mental effects to it, which I want to ask you about. You work with a lot of athletes. We're going to talk about what you suggest people should do during this COVID time, but mental stress with that, how that affects the nutrition side of it. Obviously, it affected your job, but it affects athletes in so many different ways. There's so many million ways I can answer the question, but I guess in the most blanket statement, what's COVID's effect had on us mentally and how it affects our physical makeup?
There's a lot. I think we're coming on the, hopefully knock wood, on the other end of COVID. So it's a little bit easier to retrospectively think about things. Starting it up, there were so many problems. I mean, I feel so bad for that draft class that year. They really got the short end of the stick. We didn't have combine. We didn't have, everything was canceled. And so that was a year of athletes where their life was probably changed because of that, and not in a positive way. And then we saw before the vaccine, some athletes getting COVID and how the teams handled that. And how did the athletes feel afterwards? So I had some athletes that were constantly tired, and I'm like, it had to be from COVID. Like, why are you still tired? It has to be a chronic fatigue. Most of my athletes that got COVID handled it really well. And I think a lot of that has to do with your lung capacity. I was afraid in the beginning that because I work with a lot of bigger guys, I was worried about it, but they all seem to handle it really well. And I think that's from being fit and having low inflammation in their body. Where we're going with it now, who knows? The psychological side of it, for me, and I just had it for the first time a couple of weeks ago, not being able to taste or smell was really interesting psychologically. I can't imagine being an athlete, not being able to taste and having to keep weight on. I don't know how hard that must have been. And then I have a lot of athletes that had lost weight during it too, and came out of COVID like 10, 15 pounds thinner. And it's like, all right, of course you're going to put it back, but we got to get that back fast. So
yeah, everyone has a unique experience with it. I had COVID around this time last year, and it was the off season. I was having a Corona and went to smell the lime, and I couldn't smell anything. I was like, oh, I think we got to get out. I think we got to leave. I think we got to leave, guys. And luckily the people that we were all with had it. So it wasn't like a crazy quarantine situation. We were, quarantining and all, but there was the group of 10 or so people that were coming in and out where they're at all had it within 2 weeks. So, who knows, and then I got the booster, I got the shot, I got vaccinated before camp, and it actually it knocked the wind out of me pretty good, conditioning wise. So I almost felt like I got it again. And I think because I had it and all that, but it's neither here nor there, but it was always all an interesting year with COVID per usual. It's always a fun year. It seems like the NFL
for me was that I got invited, the NFL invited me to the Super Bowl this year as a vaccinated healthcare worker. So that was a really cool thing that I got to experience that, they honored me and being like the healthcare hero, I guess, because I was one of the first vaccinated healthcare workers. So that was a really cool experience, with being with COVID in the NFL at least. And it was going to games. Oh my gosh. I know as athletes, it was really weird there was no noise in some of the places on the field. But being in the games and having nobody, in my section, nobody, was such a weird experience. I was like, I don't know, just yay by myself, like no high fives, no nothing, like just me. That's it.
Yeah. You're just like sitting there, like major plays happen and you're just like no reaction from you or anything. You're like, that's cool. Like who are you going to celebrate with? It's completely different. As we finish up, what are you suggesting for people during these COVID times, right? I think it's pretty obvious now, or hopefully it should be obvious to everyone, like get in the best shape. What should people be taking like supplement wise, like to kind of help themselves either stay away from COVID or beat it if they get it? What are some suggestions you're making to people?
Metabolic health is more important than ever, right? So once again, anti-inflammatory diets, regulating your blood sugar, staying, keeping your cholesterol down. We know that vitamin D is something that's always helpful. Vitamin D for athletes and non-athletes alone, everybody needs vitamin D. So it's one of the things, it's hard to say, because I hate to talk about it too much because it's like nothing's proven and people are so edgy on what they should do. But I think if you have an overall healthy diet, anti-inflammatory diet, keeping your lungs healthy and focusing on things like, what do I take? Like vitamin D, zinc. I'm always just kind of doing like an immune boosting protocol for myself. Vitamin C, that's another big one. And, keeping yourself in healthy situations as well. I personally think I did so well, even living in Miami, not getting COVID because I wasn't out in crowded nightclubs at night, with these people. So you have to be responsible for your actions as well.
Oh, that's definitely, and that's also the reason why you didn't get it. I'm sure you're not in New York City, running around the streets with no sun for, we're about to get snow up here. So I'm not really happy.
No, I don't. It was cold here for the week, but I'm so glad I'm not up there.
It's fun to put on sweats in Florida and a hoodie, and that's why you have them. You wear them like 4 times a year.
Exactly.
Jackie, we really appreciate you coming on, guys. Follow Jackie on all social media. Her Instagram is Athleats Nutrition. Tons of great stuff, and then awesome stuff at the top that you can go through. She talks about creatine, hormones, Q&A, her travel stuff, her chefs. Everyone thinks she's done. Everything's organized. It's awesome and really interactive. So, Jackie, really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me on.